The Tennessee Capitol Report is made possible by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee.
For connecting doctors to moms who need them most. For nurturing more healthy newborns. For creating better learning environments. For turning a park into a personal gem. Because Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee is for Tennessee. That's why we support over 270 organizations that are dedicated to creating a better, healthier state. See how at bettertennessee.com.
With support from the following members of the Tennessee Credit Union League. With additional corporate support from AT&T. Rethink Possible.
Welcome to Tennessee Capitol Report. I'm your host, Chip Hoback. Almost like clockwork, the 109th General Assembly has come to a close in 2016. And on today's show, we have an all-star lineup of legislative leaders weighing in on the accomplishments of this year's session. There were a number of headlines generated in the final weeks, including the announcement from Lieutenant Governor Ron Ramsey that he's not running for re-election this fall. And we have an extensive and personal interview looking back on his 24-year career in the General Assembly. We'll also look at the highlights of the budget and key legislation passed in this session with leaders from both houses, Senator Mark Norris of Collierville and Representative Gerald McCormick of Chattanooga. But first, we're honored to have a sit-down interview with House Speaker Beth Harwell, who surprised many in April when she announced the formation of a task force to study alternatives to Governor Bill Haslam's Insure Tennessee program. Let's take a look at a clip from her press conference.
I am announcing today the formation of a task force that will delve into these ideas and formulate a specific proposal. I am confident I have put the right people at the table to move this initiative forward.
Joining me now in the Legislative Library of the Tennessee State Capitol is the Speaker of the House of Representatives here, Beth Harwell. Thank you for joining us on the show again. It's good to have you back.
Thank you. Welcome.
Now, just wrapped everything up. What would you say are the highlights that on your behalf of this session of the General Assembly?
Well, first and foremost, and we sometimes take it for granted as Tennesseans, but we balanced our budget. And we were able to make sure that that budget did not include any new debt. There were no tax increases, and we funded all of our education needs.
And an increase for teacher pay. There was a few other things in there. Focus on education for a minute.
Right, we increased teachers' pay. We gave a little more flexibility to the local governments how they distribute that extra money. And we also included the extra month of insurance for teachers. So it was a good time for education overall.
Okay, with the supermajority that you have in both the House and the Senate here, do you think you have accomplished what you wanted to in this session?
I think we've had a good session. Certainly we've looked at higher education. It's being better funded this year. In addition to that, we've passed the Focus Act, which will allow colleges to have, universities to have their own board of directors. We've done a lot for public safety this year. We've increased the number of troopers. We've increased the number of drug courts, which are doing an outstanding job. So much of what comes into our criminal system is drug related. And if we can get these people help, not just punishment, but help as well, the drug courts I think are going to do a lot of things. And one other thing, we've passed some additional money for veterans courts because we also know that veterans have special needs.
The last time we talked, the Insure Tennessee was being thrown out, and the reasoning that you gave me was that Washington, D.C. wouldn't give you anything in writing. And so now there's a new three-star task force that you've put together. Tell us the goals for that.
Well, I'm excited about the potential here. We all want to work toward increased access of care for people who need it. It was important for me from a political standpoint that my chairman of insurance and my chairman of health were both willing to serve on this task force. That gives me more confidence that we'll be able to get something through the legislature.
And what are the goals as far as what the outcome of that's going to be?
Well, first of all, it's really important to my members that we get more of a control in the increasing cost of TennCare, the existing program. It's up to 33% of our state's budget. That's an enormous amount of our state's budget already going to TennCare. So I think they're going to look for some pilot ideas to try to contain cost in the traditional TennCare program, and then on a more measurable approach, expand our access to care.
Okay. It started out, it was a rough session of the legislature for the Republican Party and for you personally with what was going on with Jeremy Durham. And he's been moved out of office based on recommendations of the Attorney General, out of his office space. What do you see coming down for the future for that?
Well, I don't know. It's in the hands of the Attorney General, where I think it belongs. I think it was important for it to get out of the legislative body. I don't think we can police our own well. So the Attorney General is completely impartial. He has investigative authority and ability. So I don't know when he will complete his findings, but based on his findings, we'll know what action to take then.
One of the good things about that, I guess, is that there were some old HR policies that were in place, and you've put together a task force to take a look at those policies.
Right.
Where does that stand?
Well, the policy when I came in as Speaker was over a decade old, and we all know the world has changed in a decade, just a little bit. And so it really needed to be updated, and so I asked a lot of leading citizens to be a part of reviewing it and making recommendations to our Human Resource Policy Director. And they've completed their work. They made some excellent recommendations. I've encouraged our Human Resource to adopt all of them, and we're waiting on the final report.
Well, thank you for taking the time to join us once again.
You bet.
One of the criticisms of the 109th General Assembly is that Insure Tennessee was never voted on in the House. And the reaction to the Speaker's appointment of a task force at the end of the session was met with mixed reviews. Let's hear a few comments from several key legislators.
I haven't met a single person outside the General Assembly that takes that so-called task force even seriously. I mean, this is a group of people that is supposed to address an issue of statewide importance. It doesn't have a single woman on it. It has no Democrats. It doesn't have a senator. A task force without a senator obviously isn't equipped to speak for a major issue like this. You know, the governor of our state, a Republican, has come forward with Insure Tennessee. By all accounts, it's an exceptionally well thought out plan, tailored to the needs of the state. It's approved, it's ready to go. We need to be focusing on passing Insure Tennessee, not using delay tactics like task forces and these sorts of things to avoid it. I've talked to many Democrats and many Republicans, and all of them view it as just a politically motivated delay tactic and nothing else.
Well, you know, I feel bad for the people who are saying that and understand their concerns. You know, most of those individuals, like the governor's Insure Tennessee plan, you know, the legislature did not approve it. It went through the committee process. It didn't make it out of committee process. You know, there is nothing political about this. What this is about coming up with conservative Tennessee-based solutions to put into a pilot program that we can incorporate long-term into TennCare. You know, the governor's Insure Tennessee plan had a lot of good points into it. You know, part of it, though, is if you increase access or improve access for 280,000 people, but you don't have any more providers, you're really not improving access of care. And so what we really want to do is focus more on access of care and have incentives and do different things to make sure that whatever we put forth is not going to happen like it did in 1994, which was TennCare put in overnight hastily, and we spend the next 12 years and in 2005 and 2006 having to disenroll 350,000 people. That's not a plan that we want to put forth and have to relive again.
And joining me now on this all-star lineup of guests to review the highlights of this year's session of the General Assembly, House Leader Gerald McCormick, a representative from Chattanooga. Welcome to Tennessee Capitol
Well,
Report.
thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
Let's start out with something that affected your district right off the bat, and that was there was some legislation to help in the public safety sector with some increased security with the National Guard stations and the recruiting stations.
Sure, certainly. Well, we had a tragic event in my area last July where we had some service members who were killed in a terrorist attack. And what we did is we put some more money into making sure that our National Guard recruiting stations and our National Guard units are able to better protect themselves. And hopefully it'll make them more secure in their jobs. Our recruiters in particular need to be out in the community. They need to be in strip centers and in shopping centers. They don't want them behind barriers too much for people, but they do need to be protected also.
I can't imagine there'd be any opposition to something like that.
No, I think it was well received in a bipartisan way, and that's the way it should be, and that's the way we do it in Tennessee.
Also in the budget, in the past, there had to be some cuts on the highway funds, and people are worried about our infrastructure. Transportation is a big issue. What's been done in this year's session about the highway
Sure,
fund?
and we do need to address the infrastructure in our state. While it's still in good shape, it's inevitably going to get in worse shape. And what we did is a few years ago when the economy tanked and we lost a lot of revenue, we took money out of various funds, including a sizable amount out of the transportation funds. We replaced a lot of that this year, and hopefully next year we can replace even more. I think we put $142 million extra dollars into TDOT this year to help make up for some of the money that we took out about 7 or 8 years ago. Hopefully next year we can put in more and look at a more comprehensive restructuring of how we fund it.
Rainy Day Fund was increased, but also economic development. You would drive around Nashville, there's cranes everywhere. The cities seem to be doing well. What about the rural communities? What's been done to help them?
The big urban areas are doing pretty well right now. Unfortunately, many rural communities have not kept up, and our Economic Community Development Commissioner, Randy Boyd, is ultra committed to the rural communities. He announced a special program this year focused on the rural communities, and he has even publicly stated that if he does not get the mega site in rural West Tennessee with a major tenant in the next couple of years, he'll consider their efforts a failure in community development.
Also with higher education, there's a pretty big change in the structure of the university system with the Board of Regents at each of the individual state universities with the Focus program.
Sure, and there was a lot of debate about that, and even within my own mind I had a lot of doubts, but I think the governor has worked really hard to improve it and make it potentially a great thing. What he's going to do is basically have a number of boards rather than the Board of Regents covering a number of all the community colleges, as well as Tennessee State and East Tennessee State and Tennessee Tech and a number of others. Each one of those schools is going to have its own board, and so they'll be able to focus on their individual schools. Now the potential negative to that is you won't have TBR where all those schools can band together, and quite frankly the University of Tennessee's been very effective at getting capital projects, and some of the smaller schools will have to work a little harder, but I think the governor and the legislature will have to stay involved to make sure they're treated fairly, and I think they will, and that this could end up being a really good thing if we work at it and keep an eye on it and work really hard.
That's the House Leader, Gerald McCormick. Thanks again for being on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
We'll hear from Senate Leader Mark Norris next. But first, we want to go back to the surprising news of Lieutenant Governor Ron Ramsey's decision to retire from the Senate after serving as the Speaker for the past 10 years. The Lieutenant Governor gave us an exclusive interview to reflect back on his long career in Tennessee's General Assembly.
All my life, I literally have had to try to keep my priorities in order. I mean, God and faith, number one, my family, number two, my business, number three, and politics has been number four, but lately it seems like number four is getting in the way of number two a little bit, and so I am just going to make sure that that doesn't happen any longer. The weekend before I announced is when I, for sure, talked to my wife and talked to my kids and decided I didn't want to run again. It is a big decision, of course, but as I said in my speech that day, it does seem like life's flying by. When I ran 4 years ago, I had one little grandson that was 1 year old. He starts kindergarten in August. I now have 4 grandsons, and literally the day that I announced, I drove home right after session, and I had a little granddaughter born as I was driving home. And so, again, there's things more important than politics, so I just decided the time has come for me to hang it up. I can't imagine me ever running for any other office. That's honest to goodness truth. You know, 6 years ago, I ran for governor, and as an experience I wouldn't take anything for. But literally, if you want to spend a lot of time away from your family, do that. There was about a 17-month period that I practically didn't go home. So I'm past that now, and God does everything for a reason. I truly believe that, and Governor Haslam was elected. I became lieutenant governor. We've made a great team over the last 6 years, so I can't imagine ever running for any office again. When I got elected the first time, I can remember like yesterday on that House floor, 2 of my little girls were standing on the desk when I got sworn in. They were 11, 9, and 7 at that time. If you look at those pictures, my hair was jet black. So things have changed. When I came to the Senate, I never said, I'm going to be leader one day. It just seemed like things happen and God puts you in certain positions. But I will say that once I got elected leader, that I was sick and tired of Republicans serving in a minority for literally 140 years, and I set my goal take a majority in the state Senate, raised money like had never been done in the past, recruited candidates that I thought could win, and literally the rest is history, so to speak. And in 2007, of course, when on January the 11th that year when I got elected the first speaker in 140 years. So you looking back on this, it wasn't like I had a goal or a ladder I was climbing or anything like that. It just seemed like God opened up opportunities and I took advantage of them.
There's more of our interview coming up later in the show. But Lieutenant Governor Ron Ramsey's retirement opens up the most powerful position in the General Assembly in 2017, of course. And one of the names being mentioned as a future Lieutenant Governor is Senate Leader Mark Norris, who joins me now. Senator, good to have you again on the show.
It's great to be back. Thanks
All
for
right.
having me.
Your name's popping up a little bit there as one of the potential future Lieutenant Governors. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as the Senate Majority Leader, Governor Ramsey's often referred to me as his wingman, and we're sure going to miss him. It's the end of an era. We've got good leadership in the Senate, and what matters most is a smooth transition, that continuity of conservative leadership. I've really enjoyed being the Majority Leader for almost 10 years, and I think we have a plan for a smooth transition that'll enable all of us to keep our options open for the future.
The 109th General Assembly is in the books. Talk about some of the high points, some of the low points, your thoughts on this session.
All been high points. It's just been a great session. I talk about the 4 E's of Tennessee, meaning employment, education, economic opportunity, and enforcement of the law. We've really focused on that. I got to present the almost $35 billion budget last week, and it speaks to all 4 of those important E's. It's a big budget, but we're using it to put more money into our savings account, more money into education than ever without a tax increase. And in fact, this year we are beginning to reduce taxes even further. The hall tax will be cut by 1% in this budget. So we're doing all the right things at the right time.
I guess next we have to ask about being a supermajority. It seems like it should be easier for you to get the things done that you want to have done in the session, and now the next thing you focus on is keeping that supermajority.
Well, that's right, and I guess we're virtually assured of that. It's not all it's cracked up to be. Super duper majorities can be super challenging. In the state Senate, we have 28 Republicans out of 33 members. That's where it falls to me as the majority leader to try and work with each of them individually and collectively as a group to make sure that we advance our agenda and work to the maximum extent possible with the Haslam administration. I think this 109th General Assembly demonstrates very clearly how we have been able to do that successfully. And I look forward to continuing it in the 110th General Assembly as well.
Speaking of that, that'll come up in January. What are some of the key things that you're going to focus on for that?
I intend to really focus on the Drive to 55, whereby we intend to have 55% of Tennesseans equipped with a diploma, a degree, or a certificate by 2025. Time is short, and we're not moving that needle as quickly as we need to if we're going to hit our goal. I'm also concerned that we're 36th in the nation in terms of children's well-being. We need to focus on moving that up into a higher category. And finally, with senior citizens, we're 47th, I think, in seniors' well-being. So we started a few programs this year, but we're going to need to focus on those efforts to demonstrate how we govern with this supermajority.
Senate Leader Mark Norris of Collierville, thanks for coming back and joining us on the show again.
Great being with you as always.
All right. The last few days of the 109th General Assembly were filled with final committee meetings and votes. And we had the opportunity to speak with several senators about legislation that passed this year.
Well, the biggest issue for the citizens of Tennessee and for me every year is the budget. And we have a balanced budget, $34.8 million. And most importantly, we didn't raise taxes and we have zero debt. Well, Tennessee is a pay-as-you-go state. Which means we don't exceed our pocketbook. What we take in, what we spend is what we spend. We don't go to the bank to borrow money. Now that means we have to be patient with a lot of projects, particularly like road projects and building projects. But because we pay as we go, we have a really good interest rate when we do have to borrow money. It helps keep our taxes low. It's one of the primary drivers that makes Tennessee such a great, affordable state to live in. A big bill before the General Assembly the last few years has been annexation and de-annexation. A couple couple of years ago, we passed the annexation bill, which prohibited cities from forcibly annexing people into their cities. We made a promise to the people that we would come back with a bill that would allow for the people to de-annex themselves if they had been forcibly annexed. That bill withstood a ton of debate this year. Ultimately, it was sent to a summer study because there are aspects of it, particularly in the large cities of Memphis and Nashville, Chattanooga and Knoxville, that legislators wanted to consider before moving forward.
Our All-Star Marathon continues. Joining me now, Senator Steve Dickerson from Nashville. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks. Great to be here and great to be called an All-Star.
We've had a good crew on the show this week, so thank you again for joining us. One of the things we wanted to talk about was a bill you sponsored that passed recently, a couple of them that we wanted to discuss. Being a medical doctor, the pharmacist prescription birth control bill, where pharmacists can now prescribe birth control pills. What was the main reason behind that?
In Tennessee, about half the births right now are either unplanned or mistimed, and we thought it was a logical step. The American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology supports over-the-counter birth control pills. This is one step short of that, but it really works within Tennessee law. So the hope is to provide easier access to contraception for women, decrease the number of unintended pregnancies.
And probably lower the cost because they don't have to go see a doctor first, right?
Absolutely. There are a lot of angles on this that are positive.
Seemed to get a lot of support.
It was actually very gratifying. It got support from left, from the right, from the center, from everybody, and it's moved really, really rapidly through the legislative process.
Another bill that you sponsored was the biologics with the death penalty, apparently keeping DNA until the death happens. Is that the main reason behind that bill?
Correct, and there's actually a well-known Tennessean named Ray Crone who this actually applied to when he was on death row in Arizona. And what it turns out in Tennessee right now, we've got 67 men and women who are on death row, and there's no mandate from the state that biologic evidence be maintained. We think most of it's being maintained, but this just takes away any doubt.
Okay, make sure that the evidence is still there in case there's a retrial.
Correct. Retrial or any sort of questions, any advances in forensic science that we can't really foresee now, 10, 20 years down the road, this could be exculpatory. It may free an innocent person. Actually, it also may convict a guilty person who was otherwise on the streets.
Well, being a medical doctor, how does things work with you and being a senator at the same time?
It creates a really, really hectic life. I maintain my practice, and the way that the General Assembly schedule works, I work a half day on Monday, a half day on Thursday, a full day on Friday. So I have a lot of irons in the fire this time of year.
Well, that's it for our final show in 2016. We look forward to seeing you again next year when the first session of the 110th General Assembly is underway in January 2017. But as we say goodbye, we want to say farewell to Lieutenant Governor Ron Ramsey and thank him for 24 years of service to the state of Tennessee. Here are some concluding thoughts from the always colorful Lieutenant Governor. He will be missed. Thank you for joining us on Tennessee Capitol Report. I'm Chip Hoback.
Last 2 years have been very good. They have. If I want to look back on what we've been able to do over the last 6 years with Governor Haslam in particular, I think we're a well-run state. We're a pro-business state, but if anything we've done that's made a true difference, it is, since Republicans have the majority, is in education. I mean, the whole time I was trying to get these majorities, the whole time I was trying to get Republicans to be in the lead, I kept saying, folks, it matters who governs. And I think we have proven the last few years on K through 12 education, literally leading the nation in improvement in education scores, as with Republican leadership. On higher education, with the governor's drive to 55, we have the Tennessee Promise, the only state in the nation that you can graduate high school and go to a 2-year school for free. So I think the strides we've made in education is what I would rate as the crowning achievement over the last few years. The one thing I'm most proud of, that we actually changed the culture here in the state legislature. Had been the 2 years before Governor was sworn in and Beth Harwell became Speaker, we adjourned on June the 18th and June the 14th. And I'm going to be honest, that's absolutely ridiculous. We get paid a per diem for being here. We had legislators that liked drawing that per diem. And we just sit around and sit around and sit around until the 1st of June. Well, I changed that. And I said, we're going to get out of here at what I call on time. People still ask me, are we going to get out early? No, they got out late. We're getting out on time. It's really unexplainable how much it has changed. I remember when I came down here in 1993, sworn in January of 93, I saw it when a lobbyist could literally hand a credit card to state legislature and say, go out and have a big time. We have now changed that. That's not the case. Now, if the lobbyists can't buy you food, can't buy you gifts, things of that nature, and I think that's a good thing. If there is something that I am going to miss, there's no doubt about that, are those people that you got to meet outside politics. And I'm a huge country music fan, have been since I was a little boy. I can remember sitting, listening to George Jones, listening to John Conley, Gene Watson, the Statler brothers, and now I'm friends with all those guys. I've met them. George and Nancy Jones and I got to be good friends. One of the coolest things I've ever got to do as a state senator / lieutenant governor was help Nancy open George Jones Museum. How about doing the talking part? Oh, she came to see him one last time. We all wondered if she would. It kept running through my mind. This time, he's over her for good. So I can talk, okay? But I turned 21 in prison doing life without parole. But yeah, I actually saw Gene Watts the other day, and I said one of the best lines in country music ever was that I paid 7 sawmill dollars for a bracelet just to satisfy her 14-karat mind. So I know all these songs by memory, okay?
The Tennessee Capitol Report is made possible by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee.
For connecting doctors to moms who need them most. For nurturing more healthy newborns. For creating better learning environments. For turning a park into a personal gem. Because Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee is for Tennessee. That's why we support over 270 organizations that are dedicated to creating a better, healthier state. See how at bettertennessee.com.
With support from the following members of the Tennessee Credit Union League. With additional corporate support from AT&T. Rethink Possible.